Hello everyone. Welcome back to the channel. My name's Andre and I'm your bookworm. And today we have another review because another week, another book review. And today we are diving again into another trilogy that we've read the first one, but we haven't finished yet. And that is Shackled Fates by Thilde Kold Holdt. Shackled Fates is the second book of the trilogy called The Hanged God. I have read the first one, read and reviewed the first one. You can check it out here on the channel. It's called The Northern Wrath. And you can go by looking at the thumbnail or just by clicking on the cards that are above, and you'll be directed into that video. Take a look at it, see what you think. Maybe you'll have a different opinion or not. Maybe you'll be incentivized to read the book and then come back for the review of this second one. But what is this series about? Well, this series, this trilogy, is a mixture between epic Nordic fantasy and historical fiction. Maybe just like some dust of historical fiction, not that much. But I'll get that into the actual review of it. Now, this specific book, which is Shackled Fates, was published in 2021. It's fairly recent. However, so far in the 4 years since it has been published, it only gathered 343 reviews on Goodreads, which is very little. And I'm sad because I think the first book was quite good, and so I was expecting more people to read it, but I guess not. However, the average score on Goodreads is a 4.17 out of 5, so that's a good score. It means that even though few people have read it, a lot of people like it. So will I think the same? Will I not? Let's check it out. But first, let's get into our housekeeping. You know the drill. This first part will be me narrating the synopsis. If you don't want to hear anything about it because spoilers, since this is the second book, or simply because you already know what it is, skip to the next timestamp. It will jump right into our categories for the review. Otherwise, if you're curious to know what this book is about, because what I said so far isn't that much, then stick around and you shall know. Hopefully I've given enough time for the other ones to skip to the timestamp, so let's get on with it. As Ragnarok looms, the trickster Loki breaks free from his chains. In the battle to come, all shall die, but Ragnar will do anything to save his gods. Aina scours the 9 worlds for Hilda, who walks among gods and goddesses, searching the truth of the runes. For centuries, Sif has run from her past, but she knows that to protect her daughter and Midgard, she will have to face her worst fears. It is time to confront the All-Father. And that is all for the synopsis. Now we're just gonna review the scores that I gave to the first book so that we can have some context of what I think are the strengths and the weaknesses so far, and so that when I review this book, you know more or less what I'm talking about. But so, as you see, I thought the first book was quite good. It impressed me a lot because I was not expecting to like it as much as I did, especially at the start. But yeah, 4.6, really good. The only things that went excellent were maybe the character and the writing style, which could have been perfected a tiny bit more. Aside from that, plot, world building, enjoyment were a 5 out of 5, and it was a really enjoyable book to read. Now, this is the second book. Will there be a middle book syndrome or not? Let's find out. And of course, we start with our plot category. In this book, we follow the same protagonists as we started following from the first book. So as you saw in the review, in the synopsis, I mean, Hilda, Ragnar, Aina, Sif, all of these are big characters that we still follow. I think everything is smoother now because we know who they are, we know what their goals, dreams, fears, all of those are. So it is a much smoother entry into the story to continue reading it. However, the plot itself feels like a dog chasing after its own tail. What do I mean by this? Well, there's a couple of characters that are literally just trying to find each other, and they're just kind of going, not really in circles because they're going to different places, but they're almost kind of circling around each other, not really finding. And even though that trope is good, I like when it happens, especially I've seen a lot in video games, in movies where they're just missing each other. It creates some tension and you really get expectations high to want them to meet up. However, if a whole book is about that, it kind of loses its potency and its interest, because we're basically seeing the same trick being repeated several times throughout the story. So every time it gets repeated, it loses a bit of its interest or its potency, or that oomph, that anxiety, that tension that you get from it happening. And so by the last time it happens, you're really like, oh, just another one. But not all characters are like this though. Some of them still have great plots with amazing revelations and plot twists that I did not expect them to happen. But also because of these plot lines, my opinions on the characters have shifted a bit, which I'll talk soon in the character category. So yeah, what I have to say is pretty much that this category, the plot one, wasn't as good as the first book. However, it was still good. I'll give it a 4 out of 5. But it's a 4 due to the meandering of the plot that happens with some of these characters. However, I believe that it truly sets up a lot of epicness for the last book, and I'm very curious to read it. And since I've been speaking so much about how the characters are dealing, let's go into the category for characters. The development that occurred across all characters was good across the board, because even though the plot itself wasn't that great surrounding some of these characters, which, I mean, for some of them it did damage their development a bit because they're just doing the same action over and over again, and so okay that there can be some development, but not as much as if they're faced with certain challenges, which, I mean, they were faced with certain challenges, but they didn't change their goals or their ambitions. So it kind of stayed the same, but some of the characters completely changed, or not completely, they changed quite a bit and it was coherent, and I really enjoyed that change. Because, for example, Civ, which was a character that I was lukewarm, if not slightly negative towards in the first book, I really liked her trajectory in this book, and towards the end I thought she was probably one of my favorite characters. And that's what I have a feeling of in this book regarding characters, is that all of them are increasing slowly in epicness, in interest. And I hope that means that in the third book, this increase will just rise up to the max and we will have great climaxes in terms of character arcs. But for now, for this book, the category for characters gets a 4 out of 5 because of those two characters that are a bit meandering and so don't get as much development as they should. However, I do consider this category as a high 4 out of 5. So take that into account. What about world building? This category got a 5 out of 5 previously in the first book, because even though at the start when I was reading the first book, I thought this was going to be a historical fiction book and I was taken a bit aback because of it and I was afraid of what it was going to be, it turned out to be an amazing epic Nordic fantasy. And I think Thilde Kold Holdt is just amazing at merging this world of Nordic mythology with our world. I mean, I'm reading this, but I totally feel that this could have really happened while Vikings existed and Christianity was trying to take over the north of Europe. Even though, like, we talk about gods, we talk about giants, all of it, but it all seems so authentic and so real that it makes it a good read for it. And of course, the whole culture of the Vikings and how they deal with the aftermath of the events of the first book. Also, some of the characters dealing with people who are not Vikings and more lean towards Christianity. I think those were very well done. I don't know if they are accurate, but considering my ignorance, when I read what Thilde Kold Holdt wrote, I thought she had done a lot of research and it looked really good in terms of the ambience it created. But I mean, that's also partially the writing style, which I'll talk about next. But I think for me, in terms of written stories, novels, this is probably the best Nordic mythology story that I've read. I haven't read that many, only a couple, 2 or 3, but I consider this one to be the best one. So for me, this category is going to be a 5 out of 5. Moving on to writing style, I think Thilde Kold Holdt's prose continues to be positive. I think it creates an atmosphere that is just perfect for this type of book. The descriptions are just right, the action is spot on, and you can really see that the author thinks well before using any specific words in a sentence. I mean, you look at the title and you might think, oh, that's just a very generic title. However, once you finish reading the book, you can totally see the meaning of that title, and it will really open up a lot of questions and a lot of theories about what's going to happen next. But for me, the small issue that still exists in this category is the pacing, because I felt that the middle part of this book was a bit meandering, also partially due to those two characters that kept just moving on from place to place searching for each other. But I think the start and the end really raised the stakes for this book, but also for the continuation and ending of the trilogy. So for this category, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. However, I really hope that the next book, it all increase in terms of epicness and of pacing. I hope Thilde Kold Holdt creates a book where it has a pacing with levels, but that keeps increasing so that at the end it reaches that climax that is just amazing and you really want to read everything in one go and just be amazed by the writing. So that's my hope for this category. Finally, we reach our last category, which is enjoyment. Like I said in the previous review, and I keep with that statement, reading this book feels like I'm playing God of War Ragnarok or the God of War, the Nordic mythology world. Not in the sense of having the same story, but I do think they have a very similar ambience. I mean, the stories, despite being very different, they're still both very engaging. And of course, reading this book, despite those iffy parts in the middle, I still finished it wanting to know what will happen next and how the series will end. But of course, I have to acknowledge that that plot writing style pairing really dampened my enjoyment a bit, especially in that middle part after it had happened a couple of times. So for this category, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. But it could have been definitely a lot better if it weren't for those things that I just mentioned. And so we reached the end of our review. Just as a refresher, we have 4 for plot, 4 plus for characters, 5 for world building, 4 for enjoyment, and 4 for writing style. Set those two the other way around, but you get what I mean. It's a 4.2, which is very, very close to the Goodreads score, which I guess means my opinion is similar to the other 342 people that read it, or I mean some of them at least, for the average to be similar. But do I recommend this book? I definitely do. I still think it's a very good epic Nordic fantasy, and of course this one might suffer a bit. It might have a bit of middle book syndrome, but it's not that bad. It goes from a 4.6 to a 4.2. 4.2 is still pretty good. But I really hope that the third one goes to a 5. At least I hope it doesn't decrease anymore, please. But I want to know what you think. Have you read these books? Have you not? Have you read other Nordic fantasy series? Recommend it to me. I mean, I haven't read many. I have this one from John Gwynne, which is The Faithful and the Fallen, but I'm definitely open for more, especially if they involve mythologies, because I really like when fantasy books have mythologies and those two merge together very well. And besides, I feel like this book is very underhyped, so I'm definitely recommending it to more people, and you can be the next one to talk about it, so let's go read it. But anyways, if you're new, don't forget to subscribe, like the content, and you shall be seeing me on Thursdays and Sundays, okay? See you soon.